Welcome back to the Professor Insight podcast, where we explore the intersection of artificial intelligence, neuroscience, and emerging technology and turn it into something practical for your business, your strategy, and your everyday thinking. I'm your host, Professor Billy. As always, a quick note before we begin. This podcast is fully powered by AI tools, from content creation to script writing and voice generation. And yes, what you're hearing right now is a voice clone of me, brought to life with full human oversight and manual curation. Today, we're diving into a paper that's equal parts fascinating and unnerving, one that should make anyone working in science, education, health, or AI sit up and take notice. It's titled Generalization Bias in Large Language Model Summarization of Scientific Research, and it comes from Uwe Peters and Benjamin Chin-Yee, published in the Royal Society Open Science Journal. These researchers set out to answer a deceptively simple question. Can AI summarize science accurately, or is it subtly warping what we understand as fact? Now, if you're someone who uses AI tools like ChatGPT or Claude to speed up your reading or summarize research articles, you're not alone. In fact, it is in my daily workflow right now. But here's the catch. This study shows that those AI-generated summaries often overgeneralize the findings. We're not talking about wild hallucinations or false citations. We're talking about small systematic distortions. Phrases like, in some cases, quietly become in general, or this sample of patients is rephrased as just patients. The results? A scientifically narrow finding gets stretched into a sweeping claim. And the kicker? Newer, more advanced LLMs like ChatGPT 4.0 and DeepSeek actually made more of these generalization errors than older models. This is where this episode gets really interesting. The researchers didn't just test a few tools, they evaluated nearly 5,000 AI-generated summaries from 10 major LLMs, including the big names everyone uses. And they compared them to expert-written human summaries from medical journals. Across the board, AI summaries were 5 times more likely to make overgeneralized claims. Even prompts that specifically asked the model to be accurate or work step by step didn't help. In fact, they made things worse. The so-called accuracy prompts backfired and led to even more generalization. That's right. Telling the AI to be more careful actually made it less precise. Why does this matter? Because scientific communication isn't just about facts, it's about framing. When AI tools distort the scope of evidence, even slightly, it can shape public opinion, influence medical decision-making, or fuel misinformation. Think of it as a subtle, creeping kind of bias, not loud and obvious, but quiet, systematic, and potentially far-reaching. So in this episode, we're going to unpack what this generalization bias actually is, why it's happening, and what it reveals about how AI processes scientific language. We'll also explore the fascinating cognitive psychology at play, including how even we as humans are drawn to confident, fluent answers, even when they're not entirely accurate. Let's dive in.
Imagine a world where artificial intelligence, these incredibly sophisticated chatbots we interact with daily, could instantly distill vast amounts of complex scientific information, making groundbreaking research accessible to anyone, anywhere. That's the promise we've often heard, right? And it holds so much potential. But what if, alongside that incredible capability, there was a subtle yet significant hidden risk? A risk that could quietly lead to widespread misunderstandings, even in fields where precision is absolutely paramount, like medicine. Today, we're taking a deep dive into precisely that. We're unpacking a crucial new study on generalization bias in large language model summarization of scientific research. This deep dive is all about how AI chatbots, while, astonishingly good at summarizing, often subtly but significantly stretch the truth, leading us to believe things that aren't quite accurate.
That's exactly right. And this really is groundbreaking research conducted by Uwe Peters and Benjamin Chin-Yee. They undertook, it's a systematic investigation into this very issue, meticulously testing 10 prominent large language models, or LLMs, the kind many of us use regularly.
Okay, the big names.
Yeah, the big names. We're talking about ChatGPT 4.0, LAMA 3.370B, DeepSeek. various Claude versions. Their approach was incredibly thorough. They compared nearly 5,000 LLM-generated summaries against their original scientific texts, and drawing from a wide range of sources, too, including full articles and abstracts from top-tier journals like Science, Nature, the New England Journal of Medicine. So it's a really comprehensive look at how these models grapple with the nuance of scientific findings.
Okay. And our mission today is to extract the most important nuggets from this seminal work. We want to understand exactly what this generalization bias means, why it matters so deeply for anyone using AI for information, whether you're a student cramming for an exam, maybe a professional prepping for a meeting, or simply someone intensely curious about the world. And crucially, how you can use these insights to navigate the AI landscape more effectively. Okay, let's unpack this.
So what's fascinating here is the precision with which this study defines overgeneralization. It's not just about making a simple mistake like a typo or something. It's when an LLM summary broadens the scope of research conclusions, goes beyond what the original study actually warrants. Think of it like taking a very specific, carefully qualified finding and making it sound like, well, a universal truth, when the original research had meticulously placed limits on its applicability. It's a subtle but powerful shift from what the data actually says. And the researchers identified 3 specific types of this overgeneralization. Understanding them is really key to recognizing the problem.
Right.
The first type they call generic generalizations. So imagine a study that found, with very specific conditions and a defined sample, that say 75% of children in a particular age group attending a specific daycare, like sweets. An LLM might summarize that as simply children like sweets.
I see the difference. It loses all the specific.
Exactly. That crucial qualifier, 75% of children in a specific age group attending a specific daycare, it's just removed. This makes the statement apply much more broadly than intended. And this isn't just a minor simplification, It can gloss over important variations, obscure critical context, and in some cases even promote stereotyping by eliminating those specific details. They gave a real example, like a drug study finding that dulaglutide at a once-weekly dose of 0.75 or 1.5 milligram was superior to placebo in improving glycemic control through 26 weeks among youths with type 2 diabetes. Pretty specific.
Very specific, yeah.
An LLM might generalize that to simply, dulaglutide is an effective and safe treatment option for improving glycemic control in youths with type 2 diabetes.
Whoa, that's a huge jump. Suddenly sounds like a general recommendation.
It's a massive shift in scope and certainty, exactly, turning a very specific finding into this broad claim.
That's a powerful example of how a small omission can completely change the meaning. What's the next type?
So the second type is present tense generalizations. Let's say a clinical trial concluded. Participants experienced reduced anxiety. Past tense, specific to that study.
Okay.
An LLM might subtly change that to participants experience reduced anxiety.
Present tense.
Right. It's a quiet but powerful shift. The original text refers to a finding about a specific group of participants in the past within the confines of that particular study. By changing it to present tense, the summary makes it sound like a general truth for anyone, anywhere, right now. It implies the universality that the original authors might not have supported with their data, because their study was about a specific group at a specific time.
Okay, so it moves from describing a past observation to implying a current universal state. Got it. And the third type?
And finally, there are action-guiding generalizations. This is where a descriptive result, like a certain treatment was associated with the benefit, gets turned into a direct recommendation, such as, this treatment should be recommended.
Right, adding that should.
Exactly. Researchers are often incredibly deliberate in avoiding such strong action-guiding recommendations if the evidence isn't robust enough, or if there are still many unknowns, or maybe if more studies are needed. But an LLM might infer that a positive association implies a recommendation, even when the original scientists had carefully hedged their findings due to insufficient evidence. This moves from describing what is to suggesting what should be done, and that can be extremely dangerous in high-stakes fields.
Yeah, these aren't just academic nuances, are they? The real-world stakes here seem incredibly high. Like if an LLM-generated summary overlooks crucial qualifiers in clinical trial results, say, a treatment was effective for a very specific patient subgroup, or only under certain conditions, or maybe with notable side effects. A healthcare professional relying on that summary could inadvertently prescribe unsafe or inappropriate treatments. That's quite scary.
It is. It points to a significant risk of large-scale misinterpretations, creating what the study calls illusions of understanding, or even leading to risky practices. It's really the difference between being truly informed and merely feeling informed, And in fields like medicine, that gap can be dangerous, potentially even life-threatening.
You know, when I first looked at the data from this study, one particular finding truly made me pause. We intuitively expect that as AI models get newer and more powerful, they should also get more accurate, more precise. But what did this study actually reveal about the performance of these cutting-edge models compared to older ones, especially in this context of generalization?
Yeah, it absolutely flies in the face of what we'd intuitively expect, doesn't it? Let's start with the big picture. The study found that LLM summaries across the board, when you combine all the models they tested, were twice as likely to contain generalized conclusions compared to the original scientific abstracts.
Twice as likely, just baseline.
Baseline, yeah. This isn't a fluke. It points to a consistent algorithmic overgeneralization tendency embedded in these models. It seems to be a foundational bias, not just an occasional slip-up.
Okay, twice as likely. And then the comparison to human experts makes it even starker. What was that specific finding?
Right, that's where it truly gets astonishing. When they directly compare the LLM summaries to human-authored science summaries,
Yes.
specifically from NEJM Journal Watch, which are, expertly curated summaries written by domain specialists for other experts.
Okay, so top-tier human summaries.
Exactly. The LLM summaries were nearly 5 times more likely to contain these broad generalizations.
5 times. Wow.
Yeah, the odds ratio was an incredible 4.85. This truly underscores that even the best human summarizers, who themselves are sometimes prone to generalization, are far more conservative and precise than most LLMs. That's a massive statistically significant difference. It highlights a huge gap between current AI and human expert summaries in this specific area.
5 times more likely. That's not just a minor discrepancy. That's a massive gulf. And then the trend with newer models, that's where it gets truly concerning, right? We're often told the latest models are the best.
Exactly. You'd logically expect newer, more advanced models to be more accurate, but the study found the opposite trend in generalization accuracy. It's really counterintuitive. For example, older models like GPT-4 Turbo and Llama 270B, when summarizing abstracts compared to the original texts, were about 2.6 times more likely to overgeneralize.
Which is already quite a bit.
already significant, yeah. But in more recent models, this tendency just skyrocketed. ChatGPT 4o was 9 times more likely,
9 times.
and Llama 3.370OB was an astounding 39 times more likely to contain generalized conclusions than the original abstracts.
39 times more likely. That number is truly staggering.
What?
What do you think is driving such a dramatic increase in generalization in these newer, ostensibly smarter models? Is it just scale or something more fundamental in their design or training?
That's an excellent question, and the study offers some compelling hypotheses. It suggests that newer, maybe more helpful models might be inadvertently prioritizing broad, confident-sounding answers over strict, precise accuracy. Sort of during their training processes, If human evaluators in the training loop favor responses that are confident and widely applicable, even if they generalize.
Ah, so the humans training it might prefer the generalized answer.
Potentially. Then the models learn to prioritize that kind of fluent confidence over cautious precision. It's a trade-off, perhaps unintended, that seems to be getting more pronounced.
And if that wasn't enough to make you pause, let's talk about prompt engineering, how we actually tell the AI what to do. The study looked at how different prompts affected these generalization tendencies, didn't it?
Indeed. They tested different prompts that users commonly employ to try and guide the AI, like a systematic prompt, something like, take a deep breath and work on this problem step by step.
Yeah, I've heard that one.
Right, it's often suggested to improve performance. But here, it didn't make a significant difference in generalization accuracy. So it didn't hurt, but it didn't help either for this specific problem. But, and this is the most striking part, an accuracy prompt one that explicitly asked LLMs do not introduce any inaccuracies when summarizing actually doubled the likelihood of generalized conclusions.
Doubled it. By asking for accuracy, that makes no sense.
I know. It's like being told, don't think of a pink elephant, and then all you can think about is a pink elephant. The study suggests this could be an algorithmic version of the ironic rebound effect, where attempts to avoid inaccuracy actually make inaccuracy more likely.
So trying to fix it made it worse.
It seems so, in this specific way. It really raises an important question. Could our very attempts to make AI more accurate sometimes backfire? Could they inadvertently encourage the very errors we're trying to prevent? It's a counterintuitive finding that truly makes you reconsider how we interact with these models.
And what's also important to note is the consistency of this issue. Is this just a random glitch or something more fundamental?
Oh, it's definitely more fundamental. This overgeneralization tendency wasn't a one-off error that models made randomly. For most models, it remained robust upon retesting, even with the same inputs. This suggests a deep-seated algorithmic bias within the models, similar to how LLMs can acquire other human tendencies like gender or political biases from their training data.
So it's learned.
It seems so. It's not just a random error, it's ingrained in how these models process and summarize information. That's a profound thought, really. It means it's not just a bug, but potentially a feature of how they learn.
So it's an ingrained bias. Could this be an unintended consequence of how we've been optimizing them? Maybe prioritizing fluency or broad applicability over absolute precision in their training data or reward functions? How difficult is it then to untrain such a fundamental bias once it's embedded?
That's precisely the challenge. If the training data and reward signals inadvertently encourage models to be broadly helpful and confident rather than strictly precise, then this generalization becomes a learned behavior. Untraining it would likely require significant shifts in how these models are developed, trained, and evaluated. It really highlights the need for new benchmarks and training methodologies that specifically penalize overgeneralization.
Okay, so what does all of this mean for you, the individual user who's pulling up an LLM to quickly summarize a document, or for businesses increasingly relying on AI for critical decision-making? These findings aren't just for researchers. They have very practical implications for all of us.
Absolutely. For individual users, this means exercising greater critical thinking, perhaps more than ever before, actually. When you ask an LLM to summarize a scientific paper or a complex report, you're getting information that sounds incredibly plausible and authoritative. The AI generates confident, fluent responses.
Right? They sound so sure themselves.
Exactly. But as this study shows, that information might be subtly or significantly overstating findings, broadening conclusions beyond what the original source truly supports. This can easily lead to a flawed understanding, especially when you're dealing with nuanced scientific or medical information where precision is paramount. You might walk away with a strong but ultimately incorrect belief about what a study proves. It creates that illusion of understanding we talked about, which can be more dangerous than admitting you don't know something.
Yeah, that false confidence.
And for businesses and organizations, the implications are even more profound. Consider sectors like healthcare, finance, or legal services. Whether it's for policymaking, conducting internal R&D, informing patient care decisions, or even crafting marketing messages based on product studies. Relying on overgeneralized summaries can lead to dangerously misinformed strategies.
Or unsafe practices.
Or inaccurate public communication. For example, a business relying on AI to summarize market research might incorrectly generalize a trend from a specific demographic to the entire population.
Leading to flawed product development or marketing campaigns?
Precisely. And the study specifically highlights that newer, supposedly more helpful models might be the worst offenders here, inadvertently prioritizing broad, confident-sounding answers over strict, precise accuracy. Again, if human evaluators during training favor responses that are confident and widely applicable, models learn to prioritize fluent confidence over caution and precision.
This truly forces us to reevaluate the very definition of helpfulness when it comes to AI, doesn't it? Is a broadly applicable, confident answer always the most helpful if it comes at the cost of accuracy and nuance, especially in these high-stakes fields? If AI is designed to be maximally helpful by sounding universally true, even if it's not, well, we have a significant problem. It challenges us to think about what kind of AI we truly want and need. The good news is the study isn't just about identifying a problem, it also offers practical, actionable strategies to mitigate these risks. There are steps you can take right now.
Absolutely. For individual users, here's what you can do. First, if you're accessing models via APIs or platforms that allow it, consider using a conservative temperature setting.
Temperature. Remind us what that is.
Yeah, think of temperature, like how creative or random the AI is allowed to be in its responses. Setting the temperature to 0, which is the most deterministic setting, meaning the model is less creative and more predictable, significantly reduced algorithmic overgeneralization.
How much?
By a remarkable 76% compared to a temperature of 0.7, which is a common default.
Wow, 76%. That's huge.
It's a powerful lever if you have access to it. It basically forces the model to stick closer to the facts, be less interpretive.
Okay, that's a big one. And what about how we phrase our prompts? You mentioned the backfire effect.
Right. So second, given that backfire effect we discussed, you might want to rethink using accuracy prompts. That means maybe refraining from prompts that explicitly tell the LLM don't be inaccurate, or be highly accurate.
Because they might actually increase generalization.
Exactly, as they unexpectedly increase the likelihood of generalized conclusions in the study. It seems counterintuitive, I know, but sometimes less is more in prompting when it comes to certain cognitive biases in AI. The study suggests a direct command to avoid inaccuracies might inadvertently make the model overcompensate in ways that lead to generalization. And third, and this is a significant finding from the model comparison, consider using Claude models or older LLMs for scientific summarization.
Claude specifically, or older models generally.
Well, the study consistently found Claude's outputs remain closest to the original texts and generalization scope. It showed remarkable faithfulness in this regard. But interestingly, older models like GPT 3.5 Turbo also showed a reduced tendency to overgeneralize compared to many of the newer, more powerful ones like GPT 4.0 or Llama 3.3.
So in this specific domain, for this specific task, newer doesn't necessarily mean better.
It seems not. Sometimes a model that might seem less advanced overall could actually be more reliable for specific tasks requiring high precision.
Okay, so for individual users, it's about being a more deliberate user. Adjusting settings like temperature, being mindful of your prompts, maybe not demanding accuracy explicitly, and even choosing the right model for the job, which might not be the latest and greatest. But what about for developers and businesses? The ones building and deploying these models, what can they do?
Yeah, for developers and businesses, the study proposes broader, more systemic strategies. One key strategy is to implement prompt transformation, which is sometimes called shadow prompting.
Shadow prompting.
Yeah. This involves developers programming their systems so that they automatically alter the prompt the user types in before it goes to the LLM to generate a response. For instance, they could automatically enforce past tense summaries for scientific results, which, by the way, is already a preferred reporting style in top medical journals.
So the system fixes the prompt for you, essentially.
Exactly. This could prevent models from inaccurately extending past findings into the present. It basically builds in an accuracy safeguard directly into the system without the user even having to think about it. And another crucial strategy for developers and businesses is to benchmark LLMs for generalization accuracy as a standard practice.
So test them specifically for this problem.
Precisely. The study introduces a systematic, quantifiable framework to test, compare, and refine LLMs, specifically to ensure more accurate science summaries. It involves 3 steps. First, prompting an LLM to summarize scientific texts. Second, classifying both the original text and the LLM summaries based on those 3 key generalization types we discussed: generic, present tense, and action guiding. And third, comparing these classifications to detect where the LLM broadens the claims, generating an overgeneralization score. This kind of systematic benchmark could become a standard part of model evaluation, much like we measure other things like fluency or toxicity. It would help developers train models that prioritize fidelity over just perceived helpfulness, steering them away from that problematic overconfidence.
So there you have it. This deep dive has revealed a subtle but really significant bias in many leading AI models, a persistent tendency to overgeneralize scientific findings. It's a bias that seems robust, can be made worse by certain prompts, and surprisingly seems to be growing in newer, more powerful models, which really challenges our assumptions about what progress in AI truly looks like, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
And our reliance on AI for knowledge acquisition is only increasing across all sectors. So the core takeaway here is the critical importance of understanding the inherent biases and limitations of these tools, even when they seem to be performing perfectly and confidently. That illusion of understanding, as the study points out, can be far more dangerous than a clear lack of knowledge. You can't truly address a problem you don't realize exists, and these subtle generalizations can definitely create that false sense of comprehension.
Yeah. Which raises a profound question for all of us as users, and maybe even more so for the developers shaping our AI future. If the relentless drive for AI helpfulness, which often seems to translate to broad, confident answers, leads to a sacrifice in precision, particularly in high-stakes fields like medicine and science, what does that mean for the trustworthiness of the information we receive? And maybe more personally, what responsibilities do we, as users, have in critically evaluating these seemingly authoritative summaries before accepting them as fact, and perhaps before sharing them widely? Something to mull over as you navigate your next interaction with an LLM,